Boy kidnapped.
Jason, playing in a park, never came back.
And on FBI's most wanted list, this remains an extremely active scene.
What's happening? Where are Mary and Beth? Why haven't they come home yet?
Mom loves me. Mom loves Dad. Mom loves my sister. There hasn't been any.
Hi, young agents. My name is Viktoria, and I hope you're having a great day. Today, we're gonna be talking about the case of Mary Stauffer. Days before Mary and her family were scheduled to leave for the Philippines on a 4-year Baptist missionary trip, she took her 8-year-old daughter, Beth, to get a haircut.
Go and get your haircut so we look nice.
Upon leaving the salon, the mother and daughter were confronted by a man with a gun and an evil plan. Ming Sen Shiue, a former student of Mary from when she taught 9th grade mathematics at Ramsey High School in Roseville, turned a schoolboy crush into an obsession in the 15 years leading up to his Brighton midday kidnapping. That day, Friday, May 16, already had promised to be busy as Mary hustled to handle last-minute preparations for their 4-year stay abroad. She brought her 6-year-old son, Steve, an afternoon kindergarten student, to get a haircut in the morning. In the late afternoon, it was Beth's turn to go to Carmen's beauty salon of Cleveland. They left the salon and Mary was unlocking the passenger side door of the 1973 Ford Ltd supplied to them by their church, a man who appeared to be in his early 30s with thick glasses approached them outside the busy intersection.
We saw a man walking toward us. And I looked up. I thought perhaps he wanted to ask directions. And he had a gun. He pulled out the gun and put it at Beth's side and said, "I need a ride."
Ming had other plans, forcing them into the car and instructing Mary to drive north. Devoting her face, Mary attempted to appeal to him that God could help if he was in trouble. While they were driving, a police officer pulled up behind them at an intersection and Ming threatened that if the car turned the same directions as them, he would shoot Beth. The vehicles ended up heading in opposite directions.
He sat in the passenger seat and he would tell me, "Turn right, turn left, go straight." Always with his gun at Beth's side.
I remember thinking, this isn't really happening to me. What's going on? Is this a dream? I was very scared.
I said, "You know, I don't know where you're going, but we need to get there quickly because I have to get home. I have company coming for supper, and I need to get home." We came to an intersection that was a T, and there happened to be a police car behind us. And he was at that point very nervous. He said, "You turn right, and if that police car turns the same way we do, you're dead."
They drove to a remote, wooded area where Ming bound mother and daughter together and covered their mouths with medical tape before forcing them face down in the cavernous trunk.
Opened the trunk, and I realized he was going to put us in the trunk. That was very, very scary for me. I said, "Please don't put us in the trunk. We won't be able to breathe." We were lying face down, and then the trunk was closed.
Ming drove to an undeveloped area near Roseville and, in preparation for retrieving his van from a nearby parking lot, opened the trunk and put the vehicle's massive spare tire on top of Mary and Beth. At the same time, 2 neighborhood boys approached the car. One stayed at the front while the other, Jason Wilkman, went to the back to investigate. Ming panicked and grabbed Jason and threw him in the trunk on top of Mary and Beth.
All of a sudden, something was placed on my feet. And then I could hear whimpering, and I thought, this is a child.
His friend ran home. Mary tried communicating with the young boy, but he was too frightened to say much other than his name and age.
And so I started to talk. I said, my name is Mary, and I'm 36 years old, and our daughter Beth is here, and she's 8 years old. And we don't know who this man is, and we don't know what he wants, and we don't know what he's going to do to us. We found out his name was Jason. He was 6 years old.
I think he said, I'm supposed to visit my grandpa and grandma tomorrow. And we just talked about being scared.
He returned to the Carlos Avery Wildlife Management Area, where Ming took Jason out of the trunk and into the woods.
And then the car came to a stop, and the trunk lid was opened, and Jason was removed from the trunk, and then the trunk lid was closed. And then all was quiet. And I remember thinking, he's left us here to die a slow death in the trunk.
Ming didn't open the trunk when he returned, but instead just started the car and took off. And Jason was no longer with them. After ditching Mary's car and tying them up in his black, windowless van, Ming eventually took them to the electronics store he owned, Sound Equipment Services, along University Avenue. He allowed them to use the bathroom and gave them juice before blindfolding them in the dark of night. Putting them back in his van and driving to his family's home in nearby Roseville, just 6 miles from Mary's apartment. He placed them, shackled and chained together, in a back bedroom closet, measuring 4 feet long by 21 inches wide, removed the doorknob from the inside and locked the door.
They took a screwdriver and removed the doorknob from the inside of the door, and we were locked into that closet.
Aileen Bridgman, author of the book Stalking Mary, described the scene in a 2010 ABC News documentary.
This was his moment of triumph. He had found the person he wanted all these years, and he had her in his control. And he believed that it was simply a matter of time, that if she were with him long enough, she would come to love him.
In the meantime, Irv and Steve were home waiting. Mary's sister Sandra came over for a pre-planned dinner, but still no word. Irv called the salon and the hairstylist confirmed mother and daughter had left around 4:30 p.m.
Steve and I were at home alone, wondering what's happening. Where are Mary and Beth? Why haven't they come home yet?
Mom's not the kind to run away. Mom loves me. Mom loves Dad. Mom loves my sister. There hasn't been any arguments.
Irv told fellow missionary colleagues who lived in the apartment about their disappearance, and they spent the night calling local hospitals to see if they had been admitted. Irv called police later that night. The police, however, were more concerned about Jason Wilkman's disappearance. Jason's friend, who reported the abduction, wasn't able to see in the trunk, and thus authorities had no clue about the first kidnapping. It wasn't until the following morning, as investigators searched the park area where Jason was taken, that two cases began to merge into one. The license plate from the Stauffer's car was found turned off by the heavy brush during Ming's quick gateway. Finally, police had a connection between the disappearances. As many as 300 officers and volunteers began searching. Initially, Irv said he was a suspect. The police interviewed him and even administered a lie detector test, which he passed. It didn't help that in a newspaper article about the kidnappings, a sketch of the suspect was run along with a photo of Irv. There was a similarity between the two, especially their dark hair and dark glasses. and the couple went to the Philippines for the first time as missionaries in the 1967-68 school years. Prior to the trip, Mary taught 9th grade math for 2 years at Ramsey High School. Among her first students was Ming, a Taiwanese American who showed promise academically and participated in football and wrestling. While he caused no problems, other former students later told Mary that Ming was obsessed with her while she taught there. After Mary taught for a couple years in North Minneapolis, the couple moved to Polk, where Irv, now a Baptist minister, was asked to pastor a congregation. They committed for 2 years but stayed for 5 in Nebraska, where both of their children were born. By 1975, they were back in the Philippines for a 4-year stay, starting new churches in the Central Islands. That same year, Ming ramped up his stalking of Mary. Confusing the younger Irv with his father, also named Irv, he showed up at Mary's in-laws' house in Dallas on the 4th of July and held Irv at gunpoint. He took him into the house and told him to call his wife to the room. When Mary's mother-in-law entered, Ming realized his mistake. He had the wrong Mrs. Stauffer. He threatened them that if they ever called the police, he would come back and shoot them. Then he locked them in a bedroom downstairs, and they never did report it to the police. They didn't tell Mary and Irv either until after they had returned from the Philippines in 1979. Later, during the second day of her captivity, Ming told Mary that he had been the perpetrator. He spied on them from the woods outside the apartments.
He had actually been up in the woods behind our house, probably using binoculars. He knew that Beth had a little makeup Barbie that was on the dresser top of her room. He knew our son Steve. He knew that my parents had been to visit. He had followed me down the highway one time. In fact, he even knew where the spare key to our apartment was.
Day 2 of the kidnapping, Ming brought Mary out of the closet, spread out a blanket on the living room floor, blindfolded her, and tied her to a piece of furniture. What ensued was a 3-hour videotaped interview where he slowly revealed who he was.
He said, "Do you remember what grade you gave me?" And I said, "Well, no, I don't, but it must have been an F for you to do this to me."
During the question and answer session, Ming said the B grade Mary gave him as a freshman was a blemish on his otherwise spotless record, and because of that, he was unable to receive an academic scholarship. Since his father had died, Ming said he couldn't afford to attend college without a scholarship, and instead was drafted into the Vietnam War and ended up in a PO camp. He blamed all his failures in life on Mary. Those were all lies. Actually, Ming finished number 1 in his high school class and likely could have earned a scholarship to virtually any college. He was voted most likely to succeed by his peers, reportedly attended the University of Minnesota, never served in the US military, and instead studied a business in the Twin Cities. Ming had written fantasy short stories of actresses and other women he would rape and who would then beg for his sexual favors. Among the women on Ming's fantasy list was his compassionate 9th grade math teacher. He revealed to Mary a 3-step plan to avenge the wrongs his obsessed mind believed she had caused him. He videotaped at least 6 hours of rape session until he was forced to return the video camera he had on loan. Eventually, Mary worried Min would turn his attention to her daughter. He didn't rape Beth or make her watch the rapes, but he did threaten to do so. Min wasn't averse to playing mind games, however. Since Mary wasn't showing him the affection that she had in his twisted fantasies, he upped the ante, insisting Mary be more loving toward him.
You'll make love to me the way you did to your husband.
Not wanting to watch her family die, Min also told her he would kill her husband and son as well if she didn't comply. Mary gave her abductor a peck on the cheek. On another occasion, to show his control, Min went to work and left Beth in a box in his van for hours on a hot summer day, amazingly not killing her.
He hammered it into us. If I ran away, he'd kill her. If you did anything, he'd kill me.
Min eventually relaxed his strict house rules. Though still bound together, Mary and Beth were allowed to eat in the upstairs kitchen. By the 10th day, they showered. Min provided Beth with a TV and bought her board games like Uno, often playing them while eating dinner together and calling her Betty. He was weirdly affectionate in a sick parental way. Mary was forced to write 2 letters to Irv, first to try and convince the police that she wasn't missing but had just gone away, and the second to strongly suggest the police stop their involvement or Mary would never be seen again. Midway through the ordeal, Min took the pair on a road trip in a rented motorhome to a job fair in Chicago. Still wearing the same clothes as the day they were kidnapped, Min brought Mary to a shopping mall in Madison so they could change their outfits and he could take them out under the pretense of being a family. He kept Beth close to him to prevent Mary from telling anyone about the abduction. As long as he had Beth, he had control of Mary. Still, Mary tried to find ways to alert the authorities. She used a traveler's check from her purse while shopping, hoping the bank would be notified of the transaction. Even though Irv had alerted the FBI to the existence of the check, the FBI apparently was not notified when the check cleared. By Monday morning, July 7th, hope was fading. Min, realizing he couldn't stay in the family home forever, had decided to buy a camper for the 3 to live in. So, Min went to work that morning, but before doing so, he attached the cable connecting Mary and Beth through the top hinge of the closet door and looped it through, allowing them to move the length of the cable and more freely around the bedroom. Remembering how her father used to take hinge pins out of doors at home, but minus a hammer, Mary tried to force the pin up.
The principle of how a door comes off, but I thought, not very likely that the hinge pin would just come undone. But I thought it's an idea. Maybe the Lord has given me this idea. So I went over to the door, I held the door with one hand, and I pulled the hinge pin with the other. It came out just like it was greased. I mean, it was just a miracle. Beth, she panicked right away because she could see. I mean, the hinge pin came out, the door separated. It was clear that our cable was going to come through with no problem at all. And she started pulling on my clothes. She said, "Mama, don't do it. Mama, you know what he said. If he finds us escaping, he's going to kill us. You know, just wait for the police." I mean, she was really panicked. And then I did a nasty thing, perhaps, in the eyes of an 8-year-old. I slapped her cheek because she was panicked. She was utterly panicked. I thought, I have to get some reality into her right then. I sat her down in the chair and I said, "Listen, Beth, if God has given us this way of escape, We have to take it. Sure, it's dangerous. If Ming comes home and finds us escaping, he's going to kill us. We know that. But if this is God's way, he's going to take care of us. But I can't fight against you. We have to work together in this. We're chained together and we have to work together.
From the upstairs telephone, Mary called the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office and was put on hold twice before Sergeant Mike came on the line. Mary, who had found a dry cleaning tag in the closet with an address of 1916 North Hamline Avenue, knew where police could find them. Desperate and fearful of Ming's return, they hid behind an old car Ming had wrapped in plastic. Within minutes, though Mary and Beth both said it seemed like an eternity, the police arrived and they were whisked away to the freedom. FBI raided Ming's workplace and arrested him without incident. Just days after Ming's imprisonment, he contracted his original cellmate, Richard Green, who was being released from jail, to kill Mary and Beth in order to prevent them from testifying and to help him escape. He mailed the ex-inmate a $1,000 check with the promise of another $50,000 after the deeds were done. According to the formal district court report, Green admitted to the contract, but not until after the second FBI interview and after the FBI had monitored Ming's finances and knew about the payment. Charged with transporting kidnapping victims across state lines, Ming was tried in federal court in downtown St. Paul in front of Judge Edward David. After a 10-day federal trial, the jury found Ming guilty of kidnapping. Prior to the trial, Ming had told one of the psychiatrists that he knew the location of Jason Wilkman's body, but wouldn't reveal it. Sentencing was withheld until a deal could be made with Ming to locate Jason. The Ramsey County Attorney's Office agreed to not charge Ming with first-degree murder, and in late October he led authorities to Carlos Avery, where they found Jason had been killed by blunt trauma to the back of the head. Perhaps by the car's missing tire iron or by the handle of Ming's gun. He was subsequently sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 30 years. During the trial for killing Jason, this time in Anoka County District Court, Mary needed to testify again. On being cross-examined by Ming's attorney, he attacked Mary using a knife he had smuggled into the courtroom. Up from his chair, runs behind her, grabs her by her neck and holds a knife in front of her and says, "Get back or I'll kill her." A lieutenant who had been outside the courtroom waiting to testify rushed in and grabbed Mary off the stand and brought her back to the judge's chambers. Mary received 62 seizures and the second trial was delayed. After the trial resumed, Ming was found guilty of kidnapping and second-degree murder and was sentenced to 40 years to be served concurrently with the other sentence. Ming's case was in the spotlight again in 2010 when the judge ruled that even if he was paroled, he would be committed to the state's sex offender program in Moose Lake. The judge relied upon a report by psychologist Paul Reitman, who spent many hours evaluating Ming and deemed him a continuous threat to the community. Reitman stated he would be concerned if Ming was released. Mary was relieved at the time of hearing the judge's decision, since Ming had told her during her confinement that he would take revenge on the family if he was ever caught and released.
It's very easy to let the tragedies of our lives define us or become the thing that kind of creates who we are, but they don't have to. It can be a thing that happened in our life. It can be something that helps us grow, but good things can still happen after tragedy, and you can still have a good life. He had 52 days, 53 days where Our lives are basically hell, where he had us and he had control, but he does not get to have the rest of our lives. Like, we can go on to live healthy, happy lives.
Write down what you think about this case. If you're interested in true crime like I am, I hope that you would consider hitting the subscribe button, but either way, thanks for being here. See you in the next episode. Bye.